Today in the Wall Street Journal, Thursday, July 8th, 2021. What's news? Passengers have flocked back to airports more quickly than airlines anticipated, triggering headaches like delayed and canceled flights and highlighting the complexity of resurrecting the industry after more than a year of near hibernation. U.S. government bond yields reached fresh multi-month lows, reflecting investors' anxiety about the economic outlook and new concerns about the Delta variant of COVID-19. S&P 500 and Nasdaq hit records, rising 0.3% and 0.01%. Dow gained 0.3%. U.S. jobs openings held at record levels headed into the summer as employers sought to fill positions from a limited pool of workers. Some Fed officials thought the time to reduce the bank's bond buying could be approaching. Policy meetings minutes showed. The UAE is pushing to produce more crude while demand is high, creating a standoff with OPEC and its allies over the pace of unwinding production cost cuts. Robinhood is on a collision course with regulators over payment for order flow as the online brokerage gears up for a highly anticipated IPO. SoftBank is leading an investment in Israel-based AnyVision that values the facial recognition company at more than $1 billion. Authentic Brands, owner of the JCPenney and Forever 21 brands, plans to sell shares to the public. Interesting. In our pick of our op-ed today, the teachers union go woke. Parents didn't ask to be thrown into the trenches of America's culture war, but progressives aren't giving them a choice. Witness the way the National Teachers Union are opting woke values and pressing them into K-12 curriculums across the U.S. The National Education Association, the largest teachers union, held its annual meeting last week, and the measures approved by delegates deserve broader attention. One calls for the union to support and lead campaigns that result in increasing the implementation of culturally responsive education, critical race theory, and ethnic, Native people, Asian, Black, Latinx, Middle Eastern, North African, and Pacific Islanders. Studies curriculum in pre-K through 12 and higher education. Critical theory is a neo-Marxist ideology that is pervasive in higher education and teaches that a person is defined above all else by race, gender, and sexual orientation, and that American institutions are designed to ensure white supremacy and patriarchy. The delegates also directed the NEA to lobby for professional development around cultural responsiveness, implicit bias, anti-racism, trauma-informed practices, restorative justice practices, and other racial justice trainings for all school employees. The delegates called for similar training for students, just what second graders needed, instruction on how to distrust kids with different skin colors. Another delegate-approved measure calls for the union to issue a study criticizing empire, white supremacy, anti-blackness, anti-indigenous, indigeneity, racism, patriarchy, cis-heteropatriarchy, capitalism, ableism, anthropocentrism, and other forms of power and oppression at the sections of our society. Another approved statement asked the union to join with Black Lives Matter at school and the Zen Education Project to hold a rally on George Floyd's birthday, honor another victims of police violence, and promote a national day of action to teach lessons about structural racism and oppression. That's Zen, as in Howard Zinn, the late radical whose history of the United States boils down to one long tale of the people versus the oppressors in power. And don't forget the call for the union to share resources for decolonizing the curriculum, with educators to use in the classroom. The list goes on. This is no mere academic exercise. NEA convention delegates may be more committed to this ideological mission than most members, but the union represents 3 million educators nationwide. The delegates will return to their school districts as administrators, principals, and teachers to spread this message of American oppression and anti-indigeneity. Union dues will promote these causes. Believe it or not, union leaders claim that parents who oppose any of these are motivated by hate and are assaulting free speech. In a speech Tuesday, American Federation of Teachers President Randy Weingarten claimed that cultural warriors are labeled as discussion of race, racism, and discrimination as CRT to try to make it toxic, and bullying teachers and trying to stop us from teaching students accurate history. She likened the backlash to historical revisionism in the Soviet Union and other repressive regimes. But no one is opposed to teaching about America's difficult racial history, including the evils of slavery and Jim Crow. What parents are awakening to is that their children are being told the lie that America has made little or no racial progress, and therefore its legal, economic, and political system must be turned upside down. Ms. Weingarten must have in the mind those Soviets in Loudoun County, Virginia, where 5 families sued last month over school district policies and practices that are rooted in critical race theory. The families claim that administrators chilled speech and discriminated against non-minority students. Watch for similar suits elsewhere. The unions are upset because such parental pushback threatens their control over instruction in schools. All of this shows how far the teachers' unions have strayed from their original mission of fighting for a better pay and pension. The NEA and AFT have become the ideological and institutional vanguard of progressive politics. They are a powerful wing of the Democratic Party, and in President Biden and his wife Jill, they have the most powerful allies. Voters need to understand the ideological motivations at work in these unions and how that will affect what their children and grandchildren are taught. Parents have every right, even a duty, to fight back against this invasion of progressive politics in their school. As an op-ed piece, this is, again, a continual battle that we're going to have across the United States is how to move forward, including everybody. I think it's an important point made here that the teachers union is become more than just a body looking out for teachers, but now they are banding together to create their own policy, which is an interesting thought when you think about it. I think the whole idea of critical race theory is more interesting in the sense of who's fighting it, who's making it their agenda, etc. I think the article touches a little bit of what critical race theory is. I think I would change it a little and say if we just think of it fundamentally as teaching children or everyone really that the United States has a patriarchal or a colonialism past and that those structures are still there is important. But I think more importantly is what do we do about it? It seems as though all we want to do nowadays is just argue on Facebook instead of solve the problem. I understand critical race theory in school might make more people aware, but it doesn't seem to be making anyone do anything about it. As the article states, we have one of the largest unions in the country and a president in support of correcting errors of the past, but we are deeply into the presidency at this point and nothing is getting done to make things better. And the billions of dollars being spent right now are not making things better. I think we should focus on how do we make it better instead of how do we have more things to argue about on Facebook?